because most people think that speaking in front of an audience, as you said, it can be 1, 2, 3, 100, 200, 3,000 people. It's only for people that were born with the natural talent. They like to be in front of people. They feel comfortable, or they're most comfortable in front of people. And it's not always true. Now, having conversations with you, I find that quite the opposite.
And weirdly, sometimes the more extroverted you are, the less qualified you are as a speaker, because they think, I love this. And they think that that enthusiasm is enough to be a good communicator. As a speaker, as a communicator, if you're extroverted, you feed on that energy and you want the audience to give you all of that praise and adoration and validation. But the audience's job isn't to make you feel special. As a speaker, your job is to facilitate the audience to understand the topic that you're there to talk about. Your job is to give everything that you've got. You're the source, you're the fountain, and give to them without expecting anything back. And that's how you have the best experiences.
What is the preparation? So before we get to that meeting, if it's a meeting, if it's a conference, before you get to that meeting, what you recommend people to do to prepare for that speaking part of it?
What do you do to prepare? That's really the only question, which is, it's a lot like thinking about a magic show. Welcome to behind the curtain of how a magician thinks about putting tricks together to make a show. Now, when the magician is coming up with a trick, like, that's a thing that they do too. They can just come up with tricks. You have to start at the end, which is, what effect do I want to demonstrate? So, what effect do you want to have on the audience as a speaker? What's the outcome? What's the reason for this meeting? What's the reason for this presentation? What's the ideal outcome? What do you want them to understand by the end of their time with you? So you're trying to get multiple people to the same conclusion who all want their own questions answered, but the reason why they're there matters a lot. You can then go, okay, what stuff do I need to talk about in order to help them get there? What are the concepts? What are the ideas?
A lot of times it makes sense in our head. How do I make sure that what I have in mind, what I have to say, comes out the way I plan in my mind? How do I make sure it happens in the meeting?
Imagine your job is to be a chauffeur and you got to drop somebody off. What's the first thing you've got to do after you're in the car? You've got to drive to where they are, get them in the car, then you can drive them to the destination. Most people start where they are and then drive to the destination, forgetting they got to pick up their audience. So you've got to start by meeting them where your audience is. Have you ever? Does this sound familiar? Have you been dealing with X? It looks like this is the situation we're in, right? And everybody in the room goes, yeah, that is. Great. Now that we're all on the same page, we can go forward. I straight up take time to ask every single person, so what do you want out of your time here? So then you go, okay, cool. Well, nobody mentioned slides 7 through 9, so I can skip those. Cool. Nobody cares about it. Easy. That'll give me more time to talk about what that guy wanted. So if you know your stuff inside and out, you can adjust on the fly a little bit based on what they want to cover.
You need to have a very good level of confidence to be able to ask the question even before, right? Well, there's a famous saying from, he said, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. You need to really know what you talk about, not just that knowledge that you have for yourself, but know how to present that Because if any, and that was part of the next question I had, how to bounce back if you have a question during your presentation, because you're so focused, right? You know your stuff, you focus, you delivering it, but then there's a question that you didn't plan on answering in that time. How do you make sure you can come back, and how do you get back on track after that?
There are lots of ways to handle that, and a lot of it depends on what the question is and the intention behind the question, which goes back to, as the presenter, it's kind of your job to set the boundaries of what we're here to talk about and not talk about. Because a lot of times people want to jump ahead, especially in a high pressure negotiation or a sales process. You go, that's a great question. So either you didn't prepare for it and you're sunk, good luck, right? Mm-hmm. And you go, full transparency, that wasn't on my radar because I've prepared this. So if that's super important to you, I will absolutely get you the best answer after this time together. So if you want to hold off until I do find that answer, then cool, we can put a pin in this and I'll go get the answer and come back next week. If you ever say, I don't know, the next words should be, and I'll go find out. Mm-hmm. If it's well, that doesn't matter right now because that concern doesn't even matter if this doesn't go the correct way, right? So it's kind of like, listen, we're facing bankruptcy, and what you're going to do with stock options or whatever distributions 3 years from now, well, we won't have any of those 3 years from now if we don't deal with this right now. Or you go, you know what? I love where you're coming from. That's actually exactly what I was going to talk about in 3 topics, but the answer doesn't really make sense until we work up on it. So if you would, we'll sneak up on it, and then you'll be like, oh my goodness, okay, I get it. So yeah, I'm getting to it, I promise.
Do you have any advice on, let's say, I get nervous before I go into a presentation. The first 5 minutes of the presentation is kind of blur in my mind afterwards. I don't remember if I said what I needed to say. It's kind of blank. Do you have any strategies, any tips that you can give us to how to prepare right before that moment to make sure it's about the nerves? Huh? How can we calm the nerves down before we go into it?
And that's all about your autonomic nervous system. That's the process that lets you either freak out or fight or flee, right? So it's fight or flight mode. The only bridge that we have to calming that part of our mind down is having the presence of mind to control our breathing. It runs on autopilot, but we can consciously take over and direct it. So that conscious taking over the breath is the only way that your mind can say, hey body, it's okay.
So now I want to switch to in that moment, in that meeting. It's not just how we speak, it's how we present ourselves, it's the presence. How can we make sure that comes across when we're in front of an audience, whether it's in person or obviously because we do a lot of Zoom meetings and team meetings? How do I come across as the authority, as the expertise that I have to hold the room together and kind of differentiate me from others?
If you expect them to know who you are and why you're an expert, and you haven't created anything, if you haven't shared your ideas, now you're having to do all that in this one meeting, and that's really difficult. Mm-hmm. But if you are an industry expert on this topic and you're world class at it, and everybody who knows anything knows you're the most important person for this thing, then in this meeting, you have less of that heavy lifting to do because everybody there already understands that you're amazing at this, that you've got the authority, and it's probably in their best interest to pay attention.